Because I will tell you, this is where I differ than a counselor or a therapist. A counselor or a therapist, they actually have to be completely neutral. They have to be neutral. So it's like, hey, I'll talk to your child, but I can't sway your child either way. The difference about a life coach is that I can't sway your child either way. Hello and welcome to A Teen's Perspective. I'm your host, Dr. RJ. In today's episode, we are going to discuss identity crisis. That's right. This is plaguing teenagers all over the country. It's absolutely the number one concern that I receive from parents, and that is an identity crisis. Now, before I dive in, if you're just now watching my YouTube video or follow my podcast, make sure you subscribe. Each week, I post videos so that parents can help their teenagers reach their full potential. So when we talk about identity crisis, first we need to define what is an identity crisis. I'm gonna tell you my definition. My definition of an identity crisis is basically a child whose identity doesn't align with the values and the belief system of the parents. So allow me to explain. One of the jobs of a parent is to train their child. And during this training, as they're growing up, is to give them certain values, help them to adopt certain beliefs. So as the child becomes independent, those beliefs and values carry on. Anytime there is a sharp stop of those beliefs and values, it creates tension. There's this pulling effect. On one hand, the parents are pulling their children back to the values and the belief systems that they try to teach them. But on the other hand, some force, whether it's society, friends, social media, whatever, there's some force that's pulling at your child the opposite direction to adopt this new identity. That is what I call an identity crisis. And I'm telling you now, this is one of the top issues that I see in families all over the country. So if you are a parent who are suffering from this, you need to pay attention, because I want to walk you through exactly how we address this issue. Now, before I go into details, I do want to share with you some components of our program so it can make sense on how we bring the parents and the teenagers through this process. So our base program really focuses on an issue. So a parent shows up in the consultation, and our job is to really understand what is the one issue that you want us to correct. And we try to get parents to narrow it down, because yes, if you come to us and say, hey, there's 10 things wrong with my child, then we always going to kind of direct you to say, listen, we need to focus on one issue first. There's more time after we correct this issue where we can work with you and the parent and customize something to work on the other issues. But our base program, we focus on one issue, mainly because there's a lot that the child needs to learn about themselves, about their thoughts and their emotions. So we want to really connect that to the issue at hand. So whenever we're funneling parents through our consultations so we can identify this one issue, our job is to help the child to, one, understand all of the things that are going on in their head. A lot of times they have not learned about belief systems, how certain belief systems can be empowering, how certain belief systems can be extremely limiting. They need to understand about fear and doubt and how that plays a huge role over their actions. And then we bring the child through another process. And this process is really helping them to focus on goal setting. We help them to define a goal. Why it's important to have goals. How do you structure a goal so you can pursue it? And then the third kind of process we bring them through is more of accountability. Because you all know, if you're watching me and you have a teenager, you know that they can say great things and they can have great goals, but sometimes they fall short at the accountability aspect. They start something and it kind of fizzles out. So we really focus on collaboration. We help them to stay motivated through the process. So this is our kind of base program. Now we deliver this program in different ways. We have large groups, which is where I specialize in, the large groups. That could be anywhere from 50 people to 100 people. My biggest class so far was 300. It was awesome. I love it. I love the energy of that many teenagers on, my Zoom screen, and we just have a lot of fun. That's my specialty. It's the large groups. We also deliver it in small groups. Small group is more of an intimate setting. It's for the teenagers who don't really like all the chaos and the commotion of a lot of teenagers. And that's usually around 2 to 5 teenagers. And my coaches handle the small group. And then we also have one-on-one coaching, and that's also by some of my coaches who specialize in one-on-one. Now, we deliver in different ways. We basically customize it based on what the parent experiences. But the reason why that's important to share is because what I'm about to share with you is something completely different. So what you have to learn about me as a coach, so I've been doing this for a lot of years, and I've coached a lot of teen coaches. So a lot of teen coaches out there, I actually train them. And so in the role in my coaching program now that I give for parents and teenagers, and we also have young adults and preteens, it's ultimately I handle the large groups because I love the energy. I love the energy. And funny thing about the large groups is that is the number one way we get teenagers to actually buy into life coaching. As you talk to life coaches, because I've trained a lot of them, that is like the hardest thing for a life coach. It's like, yes, we can help, but how do you get the teenager to buy in? Well, the easiest way to get a teenager to buy in is for them to see that like this is not some weird, like problem, where the problem kids go kind of group. They need to see like, wait a minute, there's like everyday, normal, sometimes popular kids, just like me, like we're all in this big group. And when they come into a Zoom session, they see 100, 200 kids, it's like their mind is blown. Because these are 200 kids from all over the country. So it makes them feel like they're a part of something big, and they get excited, and it's easier to get them to buy in. A coach that I train just starts out. They have a hard time. That's one of the toughest part of being a life coach when you're starting out. It's hard to get the teenager to buy in because they don't have a group of 100 kids that can impress the teenager. So my specialty is running these large coaching groups. But also what I do in my coaching programs is I handle the hard stuff. So sometimes parents come into a consultation and they're like, hey, I want one-on-one with Dr. RJ. And we always have to explain to them, listen, we have a process. Trust the process. It works. And my role is to step in when we have hard situations. In other words, they've been through the program, the parents did their part of the program, and the child's like stuck. The child's interested in learning, and the child is interested in coaching, but they're stuck, and it's usually from some type of traumatic situation. And when I say traumatic, I mean like, they just broke up with their boyfriend or girlfriend. That's traumatic to a teenager. It really is. Or their friend group just left them. Or they're a big sports player and they just had a major injury. Or they're suffering from severe depression and therapy is not working. So that's the ones I step in and handle the hard stuff. And usually it takes me 1 to 2 sessions. And then they're back on track and they finish the program and everything's great. Now, what I'm about to share with you is what I do when I'm handling an identity crisis, because it actually is very different than the main program. So my base program, if your child is, say, they're developing an identity with the football players, and they really just, they really adopt that identity. I'm gonna be like the football players are. And the parents are like, you know what? Some of it is okay, but some of it, they're a little aggressive or they're a little conceited. Then my regular base program can absolutely handle that. But the program I'm sharing with you now, to really share these details with you of how I help, this is completely different. This is for the identity crisis that is destroying a family. So that we don't actually put through my base program. That is one of the hard stuff that I have to do myself. So this is what I coach one-on-one. So when I look at my schedule for the year, a lot of it is coaching the hard stuff in my base program, but then I also save some time to handle the really hard stuff that's destroying families all over the country, and that's the identity crisis. Now, as I'm coaching this unique situation, I kind of follow 3 steps as I bring the child to this, because I will tell you, this is where I differ than a counselor or a therapist. A counselor or a therapist, they actually have to be completely neutral. They have to be neutral. So it's like, hey, I'll talk to your child, but I can't sway your child either way. The difference about a life coach is that I can't sway your child either way. And my motivation is to get the child to have an identity that also incorporates what the values and the belief system that the parent was trying to share with his child. So I have an agenda, and I'm upfront about it with the child. The child knows I have an agenda, right? So this is why it's advantageous to have a life coach if you're a parent who's like, listen, I really want my child to have these values. I want them to have these belief systems, but they don't. Whatever identity they adopted, it completely disregards everything I've been trying to train them. So it's my job to get the child to come back, to adopt those values and those belief systems that you really want to share with them. Now, there's a caveat to that. I don't work with everybody because I will say certain values and belief systems that parents have, I don't believe the child should adopt those belief systems. In fact, I believe the child is better off not adopting those. Now, the good news is I don't really have to turn people away because my programs, they are an investment. And it's actually an investment to work with me. We don't charge per time. That's a therapy model. We don't do it. We're all about results. So when you are paying us, it's actually an investment because you will get a return on your investment. So generally speaking, if there's like a deadbeat dad or there's a mom who don't care about her kids, they're definitely not about to pay us to do this. So generally, the people that come to us in a consultation is basically parents who really, really care about their kids, who want the best for their kids, because the average person is not thinking like, hey, let me spend money to help my child become the best that they can be, or let me spend money to help grow our relationship. The average person is like, hey, I'm paying for vacations. I'm paying for, gifts. I have other things to spend my money on. I'm not gonna pay for you to just help my kid become a better person or to help my kid overcome something they're struggling with. Like, therapy is cheap. I may just do therapy, right? So we get a completely different clientele. We get a clientele of basically parents who are like, listen, I'm willing to invest in you helping my child maximize their potential. So thankfully, I don't really even find those parents who really don't care about their kids. So I can safely say when I'm helping with the identity crisis, it's truly from a parent who is being there for their child. I mean, they're giving everything to their kid to make sure that they become responsible human beings. They love their child. They're following all of our strategies on how to parent a teenager. So there's a lot of alignment, and their value systems are helpful. It's not there to harm the child. I don't get alcoholics who beat their kids. Like, that's not the parents that I'm working with. So I can safely say, yes, I will help you get your child to adopt your value systems and your belief systems. So hopefully that makes sense for any parents that's kind of wondering out there. All right, so let me just go through this really quickly. It's really 3 steps that I take the child through to help them. And the first one is education. Oftentimes when a child develops an identity, they have no clue they've adopted that identity. They don't understand what identity is. All they know is that, hey, I agree with this group, or I enjoy hanging with this group. And, it's one of those situations where it's birds of a feather flock together. So they start hanging out with this group, and then all of a sudden they start adopting the words that this group is using. They start adopting maybe even the dress and how they're dressing and the things they're interested in and in the belief systems. And they start adopting everything, and then they become the group. It's like this group has a persona, and your child adopts the identity so that they're all, as a group, have the same identity instead of having an individualized identity. So they have to be educated because they really don't know. And then the next step after that, I want to understand them. I think oftentimes a lot of parents go wrong with trying to help their children by just lecturing them. You cannot lecture a child on something like an identity and expect them to just listen and adopt what you're trying to tell them to believe. There has to be a level of you trying to understand them, truly understand them. What do they see in this group? How does this group make them feel? How do they see themselves? So I'm going through this entire process to truly understand the child. And then before we go to the last step, there is a point where the child understands what an identity is. They see that maybe this group identity is not serving them. And what I say by that is there are belief systems. There are certain beliefs that empower us, that makes us to want to be better, a better human being, to grow. And there's also belief systems that limit us. So we really dive in to see, how is this new identity, or this identity you've adopted, how is this empowering you? In most cases, the identity is empowering them in some way, whether it's like, I feel more confident when I'm around this group, right? I feel brave when I'm around this group. But then we start to look at, how is this group limiting you? And we really have to talk about that, because I will tell you, if a child has an identity that is different than the values and the beliefs of the parent, it will create a void naturally. So I'm gonna say that again. If the child has an identity that is different than the values and the belief systems of the parent, it will create a void. And this is not necessarily intentional. It will naturally create a void. So that means there is a limiting effect to this identity that the child has chosen. Once the child's like, yes, I get it, I understand, now we go into the transformation stage, where we literally have to take this child and help them create a new identity. It doesn't mean that they can't be a football player, or they can't hang out with this group that they want to hang out with. But it does mean that they're going to adopt the beliefs and the value systems of the parent. And this process works. It requires a parent who is truly committed to this. Because I will tell you, it's not just me working with a child. It's also me working with the parent. So I always tell parents, don't believe that you can come here and just drop your child off and say, bye, RJ, call me when it's all finished. It's not the way it works. Because there's a lot that the parent needs to change through this process. So hopefully that gives you guys some hope, but it also gives you an idea of what we do behind the scenes. And the reason why I said I hope it gives you hope is because when I meet parents, they're extremely desperate. It's like, I've tried everything to get my child just to understand, like, why I want them to believe this thing. I see this a lot with religion. It's like, I want my child to believe my religion, but they won't even consider the religion. So that's why I hope what I'm sharing with you, there's hope, because we can help. And if this interests you, definitely schedule a consultation with my life coach coordinator. That's at drjjackson.com/coaching. Share with them about this podcast, what you learned about it. And let them know, say, hey, I just learned that Dr. RJ can help with an identity crisis. And they'll let you know if you should do my base program, which can help in a lot of situations, or if it's really, really extreme and it's tearing down the family, then they're going to recommend you to do one-on-one with me, where I can help restore your family. So thank you for subscribing. Thank you for supporting this channel. And I'm looking forward to seeing you guys next week.